Welcome, everybody. John Aravosis here. You are watching the Aravosis Report. Normally, we are here to talk about Ukraine, but tonight, because we are 8 days out from the American elections, we are going to be talking about the latest polling and what it looks like is going to happen next Tuesday in a week. We are going to talk to, and actually I've got him on screen already, my friend Cliff Schecter, who is an election expert. Actually, I've got Cliff's whole, wherever it is on the screen, Cliff's whole bio up there. But basically, Cliff is a long-time, I would call you, Cliff, a long-time DC political expert, now living in Ohio. But Cliff really knows polls. And that's I mean, I'm sure you've got a lot of skills as well. But for me, I've always been impressed.
He can juggle a soccer ball really well.
He's a good dad too, but no, but I think your expertise in polling, understanding polls, cutting through them, knowing the good polls, the bad polling, but also you're very honest about polling. And that was one of the reasons why I wanted you as a guest. And I think folks would appreciate you is, you're a Democrat, you work for Democratic causes and clients, but you're honest about polls when you analyze them. Yeah. You don't.
It's worse than I'm just work for Democrats. I mean, I see the Republicans, MAGA Republicans as a danger to my country, but I still will tell you if the danger to my country is going to win, because we need to know, So, hi guys, thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us, Cliff. Everybody, I'm gonna, I guess I'll do just a quick little update since we've got you guys today. We are streaming today because it's the easiest way to have a guest. So that's why I've got the cool little outline on the screen. The one thing you should know if you're on TikTok is the gifts that go on our heads or on our glasses, those don't work when I stream. The gifts that go on the bottom of the screen do. So as always, I appreciate your gifts. It really helps my work. And frankly, I appreciate it because it shows you guys care. And that means a lot to me. So if you can keep giving the gifts, I really appreciate it on YouTube, the super chat questions. And finally, obviously, please do follow me wherever you're joining us from, because that would be amazing. Let's dive right in. You know what? And I knew what was going to happen, Cliff. I told you about this. We always have fewer people when we stream on TikTok. Unfortunately, it disfavors it. But anyway, folks, it's going to be our more intimate group today, because it was way easier than using TikTok for doing the guest feature. But in any case, all right, let's dive right in. We've got a good hour here, folks. Cliff and I figured we'd start talking about the various polling, different states, national in terms of Senate races, House races, but also some of the important governorships, and then open it up for questioning. I mean, Cliff, maybe why don't you start with a lay of the land? What I mean is, very briefly, what's going to happen in the House in terms of where polls are today? What's going to happen in the House? What's going to happen in the Senate? Or maybe your predictions, and what's going to happen with the big governor's races we care about.
Okay, so let's start with, I'll start with thanks everybody for being here, and thanks for having me, John. This is it's fun. Some of you may know John and I used to do a podcast, so it's a little bit of a reunion, which is kind of a good time.
Oh, and I didn't say I've got my costume today.
And look, John is like, and he didn't wear the red one, so he's not the one they're going to send out to die.
It's my Star Trek costume.
Right. So very Picard of him. Very Picard. So I'm actually glad to be doing this week as opposed to last week, because I almost feel like things, bottomed out, and I would have had to say based upon everything. And again, I don't just look at polls. I look at candidates and what they're doing in fundraising. I look at the experience I have and my knowledge of the sort of these states overall and what their lean is. And I kind of try to work all of that into it, right? So that I can give you, I feel like sometimes people have gone too far in a direction of all they do is analytics, right?
Yeah.
Like Nate Silver sometimes seems to have lost the plot, I would say.
So
and then there's the people on the other side, the people used to be like, my gut tells me you need both. Okay. So let's do both right now.
Okay. So
the overall lay of the land is Democrats have actually this past week, I think I would say, due to the fact that some good economic numbers came out, I would say due to the fact that, some bad things came out about a number of Republicans in Senate. We'll start with Senate races, okay? Biden's numbers have ticked up a little bit. And
they did. I didn't see that, did they?
They did. And the way this works is, the president's numbers is going to affect how people vote for, because there will be people that say, I hate Joe Biden, so I'm not going to vote for, or I love him and I'm going to, people that are undecided. And so this stuff matters.
Right.
Right now, the easiest ones, I would say, I'll start from the perspective of a Democrat who doesn't want to lose any seats. The one we're in real danger in is in Nevada. If you're in Nevada and you have good center to left beliefs, turn out and vote for Catherine Cortez Masto. She's the incumbent. The Republicans, that was probably their best recruit. They got Adam Laxalt, who's the attorney general, and he is like the scion. I always pronounce that wrong.
Scion? I don't even know. Yeah,
scion of a famous family. His grandfather was a governor and a senator.
Right.
So I think that race leans slightly Republican, although I'm hoping it doesn't go that way. But I would give them the slight edge to take that seat from us. On the other hand, I'd give us the slight edge to take the seat in Pennsylvania. Yes, John Fetterman had a rough debate for obvious reasons, but Oz has gotten just destroyed all over the place. The state leans in our direction.
Right.
A poll just came out that showed Mehmet, so that Oz got closer, but Oz was getting crushed by like 12 points before. It was now 49-44 Fetterman. Overall, he's running a good race, and Oz said that thing about abortions between you and it's between women and doctors and local political officials.
Right.
That plays well.
Right.
So that would be and if we each did that, that would be trading seats. I don't think Republicans have many other opportunities to pick up seats. Mark Kelly is up over 50 in Arizona, doing great. The senator there. I'm trying to think if there are other ones. Warnock is closer than I want it to be, and they may go to a runoff. But
that's Georgia against Herschel.
It's Georgia. I'm sorry, against Herschel Walker, who barely is cognizant that he's alive, and he's up. Warnock is up 49
with his children.
Yes, he probably by the time the election happens next week, 2 more children will come out. So,
that's right. The Walker family is going to double by next Tuesday.
It will. It's
the known Walker family.
It exponentially grows. The thing is, it's a lean Republican state, but Warnock has sort of done well lately. And Walker, again, a second story came out about taking a woman to get an abortion, and from somebody who believes that all abortion should be banned. It doesn't, make you look good. So I think it could go to a runoff. So the thing about Georgia's one of 3 or 4, I want to say 4, I believe. Louisiana, Mississippi, they're all in the South. Alabama, Georgia, states where if you don't get 50% of the vote, they have a runoff between the top 2 vote getters. Right. So there is a good chance there that Warnock ends up, I'd say, wins 49-47, something like that, and they have to go to a runoff. Okay. I still think he pulls it out in the end.
How about Utah? Somebody just asked.
So that's the fascinating one. I think I'm almost more sure of that than anything else I've told you so far, that Evan McMullin, former Republican, worked for their House leadership, CIA, Mormon. I mean, was a regular, normal Republican in the past, but broke with Trump heavily and actually believes in our Constitution, even if I disagree with him on numerous things. He's running a brilliant campaign. The thing that he did is he ran as an independent. The Democrats were smart enough for once to not step on our own whatever, and we actually did not run anybody in that race. So he's going to win a coalition of independents, moderate Republicans, and Democrats. The last poll had him up 6 points, like very solidly up. And he did the smartest thing, which is he said he will not caucus with either side. So
tell people what that means.
So if you caucus with one side, with either Mitch McConnell, the ugly turtle, or Chuck Schumer on the Democratic side, then that means you are voting for them for leader, and the leaders to get to decide what votes, what come to the floor,
and who
control everything.
But Cliff, also who's the majority, or no?
Yes, they determine the majority, and then once the majority is determined, the majority leader will determine what votes are held. It can have an effect, as we know, when McConnell was majority leader and Obama was in office, he wouldn't allow a vote on Merrick Garland as Supreme Court justice. I mean, It's a pretty big deal. And so, yes, you'd want McMullin in an ideal world to caucus with us, but they would beat him over the head with that in very Republican Utah.
But it still makes it harder for them to get the majority. If I just want to put a finer point on this, if McMullin wins and refuses to support anyone for majority leader,
yes,
that in essence almost takes a vote away.
Right. Instead of it being sort of a +2 for us, -1 for them, +1 for us, it's just a -1 for them, but that's still
another seat then. Right.
That could be the difference.
Right.
I mean, we could end up with 50 of us, 49 of them, 1 independent. We're in the majority. So that's an incredibly important seat too. And then
Yep.
I'll say quickly, there are 4 seats that I would say that could go in either direction. They are held by Republicans or open. So it's very close. The one here in Ohio, Tim Ryan has run a great campaign and JD Vance is just awful. We lean about 3 to 4 points Republican here, so it's not an easy win.
Right.
But every poll has shown it either tied or lately Tim Ryan up 1 or 2. I'm not saying I fully trust it because I have to see it. But Sherrod Brown found a way to win here, and Tim Ryan's followed a lot of that formula, which is basically being a Democrat, but coming out against trade and some of the things that in the northern part of the state
right.
where jobs have been lost can win over a small percentage of the white working class vote, which can put you over the top.
Okay.
We've got former state Supreme Court Justice Sherry Beasley in North Carolina. I always get excited about North Carolina, and we always seem to find a way to lose it by 1 point. So I'm not going to say I'm confident. I think that one could go either way. I might give that a slight lean Republican. There's Val Demings, who's an incredible candidate, taking on Marco Rubio, who's a complete goofball in Florida. But Florida has moved away from us a little bit. If I'm being honest, I have to give the advantage to Rubio, but I don't think it's a done deal. I would say I'd call it about a 70-30 Republican to Democratic sort of chances. So we do have a shot.
Okay.
And the other one that's kind of gone back and forth and been very strange is there's the one with, which will appeal to your viewers here, Russian Ron Johnson in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Incumbent who pretty much repeats everything that comes out of Putin's mouth. And I mean, he's just been awful on everything. You know, was anti-vax. We ran a candidate, Mandela Barnes, who for a while there kind of, I would say, was running a campaign that I wouldn't call the best. He's kind of pulled it together lately. The last poll had him up 1 point. It's incredibly close. It's going to come to turnout. Wisconsin does have a Democratic lean, which helps us. So I would call that one that could go in either direction.
So give me a synopsis on Senate overall. Where are things today, and where do you think they're going to be in terms of your prediction for the Senate then?
So my prediction is, because the 4 or 5 races I laid out to you that I think could go in either direction. The race in Nevada that sadly I think we're going to lose, but again, everyone turn out to try to make that not happen. The race in Pennsylvania that I think we are going to win, and the McMullen race leads me to say, overall, my prediction is we pick up 2 Senate seats plus McMullen is what I think happens.
So that would what? You mean leave Dems with like a 53 majority?
We would have 52. They would have 47, and then there would be 1.
McMullen. Okay, so yes. The Dems would hold the Senate. We can talk about House, since there's so many House races. Let me ask you a few things first. Beto in Texas. He's running for, I'm already forgetting, governor?
He's running for governor. Right. The last one shut him down 2 points. God, it's so hard to bet against him.
He's always like 2 or 3, isn't he?
I know. If it were not Beto, I would say to you, we're going to lose. It's only that it's him that I still would go in the direction of slight lean to Abbott, as much as that makes me want to vomit, because it's still Texas. I would probably say 60-40 Abbott. But if everybody gets out there, if the turnout, and Beto does inspire, I haven't said this yet, and I'll get to it, but Gen Z turnout in this one, Gen Z turnout is what broke records in Kansas. Right. And it's really why we defeated so much.
Talk a bit about the youth vote. And then I also want to throw Arizona at you, because we've got Secretary of State and
Yes. But other races I'm more frightened about than I am about the Senate race.
Start with the youth vote then. Talk about that.
So the youth vote, John and I, as we get a little more gray, we probably complain more and more about younger folks not voting, because it's sort of like, this is your democracy. Do you want it? The message seems to have finally gotten through, and it may have been ironically, the Dobbs decision that did it. Something, and I can't tell you exactly what. I think also a couple of the high-profile school shootings that happened over the summer, and you'll know, John, as a Chicago and Highland Park was shocking to people. Right. The one at Uvalde that was so awful. I think on those issues and climate, it just seems like some of these storms, it's all come together where Gen Z is finally some of the attacks on the LGBTQ community, on the gay community, on the trans community, just issues that are important to young folks overall, even disproportionately. All I can tell you is the Kansas vote where everybody thought they were going to pass this ban on abortion. This happened a couple months ago, and this was an off-time election, right? This wasn't during like a general election where you get big turnout. We broke records. Gen Z turned out like they've never turned out before. And the women's vote, we had a 7-point larger turnout than normal relative to the male turnout, and we won by 18 points.
Right.
If that happens, Beto will win. That has to happen. And that's why, like I'm not one of these guys who's going to sit here and say to you, I know this is going to happen, or I know that. I will tell you my best guesses, but the youth vote is going to be, it's going to be the decider here. Right. It really is. Because like in Georgia for Stacey Abrams, she's been down in polls. That's the only way she's winning. Beto's closer than Stacey Abrams. I want to say so badly Stacey Abrams is going to win. I would tell you right now that my guess is she does not. It's more, I would say it's more 70-30 in the Republican direction. The only thing that can save her is youth and youth of color turning out.
Right.
And if they do, she can pull it off. If they do, Beto can really pull it off. I'd still put that one closer.
Right.
We're going to hold the governor's races we have. Gretchen Whitmer is well up on that lunatic woman, Tudor Dixon, who says a new crazy thing every day. Actually, the
Lake in Arizona.
Let me give you two governor's races that worry me. Arizona worries the hell out of me.
Right.
And I see Elise Leonard in there, who said she's from Arizona. And so, hi, first of all, Elise. My sister's name is Elise. Second of all, I never want to be somebody giving this news, but I would have to give the advantage to Carrie Lake right now.
Oof.
She's dangerous. She is TV trained in a way that most Republicans aren't. So many of these Republicans have come off like freaks and sleazoids on TV. She, about 22 years as a news anchor, she knows how to play to the TV.
Very polished. And she's
very polished. And
she dresses the part. I mean, she's very MAGA electable. I mean, she looks like she'd be a Fox News anchor.
It destroys me to have to say this because I effing hate her.
Yeah.
But I think that Hobbs made a huge mistake refusing to debate her. I get why, because probably she knows she's very good, but it made her look scared. And I mean, I wish I had. I would tell you right now, again, it better be the youth turnout of all youth turnout. And maybe Mark Kelly winning by a 5, 6, 7-point margin helps pull what's her name over the top. I think it will help us win that Secretary of State race because Fincham is nuts and he's not camera friendly. And, he just comes off like this creepy lunatic. And so I do think we're going to win that race. But the one I'm worried.
Go on. Sorry. No, you can finish.
The one I worry we're going to lose is the governor's race. And if I had to pick, if you put like me up against the wall and said, I'm going to punch you in the face unless you tell me what you really think, I slightly think that Carrie Lake's going to win.
Okay.
As much as I hate saying that. Just the same way with Brian Kemp right now in Georgia. As much as I hate saying that.
Let me thank Crutcher for the corgi on TikTok. I sort of wrote that one down. I wanted to thank you for that. And you were talking about it not being smart for oh my God, I'm already forgetting her name. The Secretary of State of Arizona, Hobbs, debating Carrie Lake. Was it smart or not for Fetterman to debate Oz in Arizona?
I don't think he should have.
Now tell people
that's a different case.
But tell people what the background is here.
Okay, so the background is that Fetterman had a stroke.
The Democrat.
At this point, for anybody who understands the science of this, his brain is let's put it this way, his brain is more functional than at least half the House Republican caucus. And I mean, his brain is functioning perfectly.
Walker, yeah.
Yeah, his brain is functioning. The difficulty is getting that from sometimes the connection of getting it from, your head to your mouth. And I'm not a scientist. That was the issue.
Right.
And the reason why I would tell you he shouldn't have debated is because he was so far ahead. It's in a close race, like the Hobbs-Carrie Lake one. Right. She had to debate because it wasn't like she had enough of a lead at that time that she could do it.
Right.
I think that if I had been the Fetterman people, I would be like, absolutely not. And so somebody I saw in there. Here's one that is an upset that I think is going to happen. She's a former Republican, is running an incredible race, and we are winning. And this is again in Oklahoma, and I think we're going to win that governor's race. I saw somebody ask about that. Remember how we won Kansas last time? And I do think Kansas is going to be close, but because we have the incumbent, and the incumbent was the one that came out, I can't think of her name right now. It's driving me crazy. She came out strongly against that referendum to ban abortion, and she put everything on the line. I think she holds on, and I think we actually pick up a governor's race in Oklahoma, which is insane. The one that I haven't said yet that worries me on their side is I think they've got a very good shot at the one incumbent of ours. They've got a good shot of knocking off is Tony Evers in Wisconsin, because he just doesn't have a ton of charisma. He doesn't have the it factor. And they've been attacking him mercilessly. Now, I would give that even, because it still is a lean Democratic state and he's the incumbent. I'd either say even, or I might give Evers a 60-40. But it's not like the Michigan race where I think Gretchen Whitmer wins it running away.
David is saying Kansas Laura Kelly.
Thank you. Yes, it's Laura Kelly. I appreciate that. Thank you. I see Anna saying that. If anybody else, thank you.
Yep.
People are asking me about Ohio. Obviously, that's my state here. I mean, I so badly want to say that Nan Whaley is going to beat Mike DeWine, but DeWine is probably the other one like Laxalt, in Nevada. It's a political name that has been here for 30 years. The only person who's ever been able to beat DeWine was Sherrod Brown for the Senate seat in 2006. And Sherrod Brown is so talented. I love Nan Whaley. I know her personally. I hope the turnout is such that she wins. She's made choice. And the fact that she handled when there was a massacre in downtown Dayton, she handled it so well. So I could see the youth vote turning out for her. I hope, but I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that I think it's 70-30 or even 80-20 that DeWine wins, which doesn't mean you don't turn out. Everyone turn out, because if everybody turns out, we have a shot. With the congressional districts, I'm happy. I see somebody asking Richie. I'm happy to say the thing about what happened with the Supreme Court is the Republicans did what they always do, and they cheated. But that Supreme Court decision, they kept getting held in contempt of court and had to keep coming back with better maps while they ran the clock out. So we didn't get as good a map as we should have gotten, but we got a map that was like instead of a map that was like 80% better, we got a map that was about 30 to 40% better. If you see what I'm saying, because they kept running it out for 2 more months, and then they had to make a somewhat better map. So a guy who's actually a friend of mine, I'm really happy to say, I feel very strongly about this. I've seen the polling in the 1st district, my district here, where we have Steve Shabbat, who's an election denier, who voted against accepting the electoral votes from, I don't remember if it was Arizona or Pennsylvania, but one of them. It's just a scumbag. Greg Landsman is a city councilman here. Last poll had him up against the incumbent 49-44. So I think the direct result of that Supreme Court decision and our having a good candidate means we're going to pick up at least 1 House seat in Ohio. And we may actually, there's 2 other seats. There's one in the Columbus area and one in the Cleveland area that are close.
Okay, let me broaden out. The hateful people, how are they doing? The big 3. Marjorie Taylor Greene, Matt Gaetz, and Lauren Boebert.
So,
although granted, there's more than that, but they're the big 3.
There are. Here's where I'll make a big prediction, and I could be wrong, but I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to say that we knock out Lauren Boebert. And I'm going to say that for specific reasons. She is in Colorado. She is in a district that only has a 4-point Republican lean, and the last poll had her up at 47, which is when you start getting below 48, you're entering a danger zone for incumbents. Right. Adam Frisch has raised a lot of money and run a good campaign against her. People are sick of her. A lot of Republicans have had enough of her, the non-crazy Republicans of her shtick. And Colorado, because it's a liberal state, you can register voters literally up through Election Day. So there are groups that are still registering voters and registering voters. I think that's going to be one of the shocks.
Interesting. Right.
However, I can't give you the same good news on Gaetz and on Marjorie Taylor Greene. It's not because they're not crazy. It's not because they're not awful. It's because they just happen to be in these states where there's just or these districts that have enormous Republican advantage.
In Florida and Georgia.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's advantage is it's like a plus 25 Trump district. I don't think she's going to win by that. I think she'll win by 10 or 12 points. I think she'll lose a whole lot of people that should be voting Republican. I just think it's too big to overcome. Right. And she's got a terrific candidate against her, Flowers, and in a decent district, even a +8 Republican district, you might have a chance. I just don't see how. One more though, another big one that I think is going to go our way. That may not be the big three, but it may be the original patient zero for the.
I was going to ask you about this. Go on.
And for the what's called the pollutants that have taken over Republican brains. I think Mary Peltola holds on and beats Sarah Palin in Alaska. The way she beat her last time, she's going to beat her again this time.
No, I cut you off. She's running against Sarah Palin in Alaska for the congressional seat.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's just perfect. Palin's a mess, right? Like she's a mess beyond the normal stuff. She was Mrs. Family Values and all that. The stuff about her kids, but a lot of people don't even know her husband left her a couple of years ago, filed divorce, and claimed that she physically assaulted him. I mean, she's lost a lot of her even former Republican allies because she's so crazy in Alaska. Right. And that's what allowed Peltola to win. I think Peltola, and of course, ranked choice voting, I think Peltola will win. Right. And will beat her. So that will be another big win that night.
Ron DeSantis in Florida. No chance for Christ or what?
I think he's going to hold on. I mean, Christ always makes it close. That's the thing about him, right? Like he lost to Rick Scott when he ran against him by 1 point. I mean, I think he's going to make it close, but DeSantis has raised so much money and dumped so much money in there. I so badly want to say that DeSantis is going to lose, but again, I'd go another. Christ is a former governor. Christ has been on the political scene for a long time. Right. He's got moderates supporting him, so I wouldn't count him out. It's not a race where I'd sit here and say, he's done. Right. But I would go 80-20. I'd probably say in DeSantis's favor.
Okay. And thank you, Inspired Woman, for the Halloween gift. And sorry, folks, but the reason we've got about an hour with Cliff here, and I want about a half hour or maybe a couple minutes more of specific things that I ask him and then throw it to you guys, which is why I'm trying to sort of keep it going fast. Because normally Cliff and I will do our show like for an hour and 20 minutes, but
I don't go off on like tangents and,
Well, I don't know if your family's going to let you, but
That's true. It is Halloween night, so I got to get back at some point.
That's true.
For the kids, but yeah.
It's Halloween night.
I know. Look at John.
Somebody asked, how do millennials vote, Republican or Democrat?
They vote Democratic.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, by about last poll I saw, I probably had it by about 10 to 15 points. It's not as big as Gen Z, but it's a pretty solid Democratic lead.
Okay. Talk to me about abortion then. We haven't talked about that impact on the races.
Yeah, I think for a period of time in this, John and I, in our old podcasts, other places have lamented, screamed, kicked holes in walls about Democratic messaging and the fact that we don't force our messaging out and talk about stuff. Democrats, to their credit, have been very successful on the issue of abortion. I think there's other issues they could have been more successful on too. I'm still not happy with how much the lack of being out there telling everybody constantly all of the good Biden's done. I mean, honestly, Biden has a record right now economically that and legislatively that compares with LBJ and FDR, and nobody knows it. Well, and it drives me nuts.
I was talking to my nephew or somebody the other day, and I'll admit this because I sort of use myself as a bellwether. When I forget stuff, sometimes I got a bad memory, but when I forget stuff, it means I asked my nephew and I said, and he follows this stuff. I was like, Ants, didn't Biden get something big passed a couple of months ago? And I said, I know he did. I can't remember. And he goes, student loans.
The Inflation Reduction Act. Where we finally, as you know, John, we finally gave Medicare the right to negotiate drug prices and cut them in half. And
if anybody would talk about this,
right? Anybody who's been in Washington would, like when John and I, John's still there, but when John and I were kind of working on, John was on Capitol Hill when I was doing all that stuff. You got to understand, this was one of these things that we wanted to do for 30 years that they kept blocking. It is such a big, I don't know if I can curse on this, big effing deal that
negotiating drug prices for Medicare. It's a whole complicated thing, but it was literally against the law for our
Yes.
Medicare government program to use its buying power. I don't know if it's got 40 or 60 million seniors, to use its buying power to tell drug companies, well, if we're going to, let our insurance cover your drug, you're going to give us a deal.
Right.
Illegal.
I mean, the Inflation Reduction Act, most people don't know, we're set to get something like 30% by 2030, is it? 30% below 2005 CO2 levels because of the investments that Biden and the Democrats made in electric cars, in making sure that buildings in places no longer use oil and gas and start using solar. Like there was so much in there that people don't even know, the kinds of things that people don't know. Residential buildings, how much carbon they create. It's a ton.
Actually, let me say this. I did hear Biden today, or again from yesterday, mentioning the Medicare drug negotiating. That was great for the prices. But generally speaking, literally, I, who follow this stuff every day, and my nephew who does too, and we're both going, there was something big 2 or 3 months ago, like a big thing, like it was big.
Well, and then there's the infrastructure bill, which he got a bipartisan bill through that built all these bridges and created. Do you realize like that was an economic development bill? We needed it for our infrastructure. It also, we have full employment.
Yeah. Like
when I studied economics, they said 4% was full employment, and we have 3.5% unemployment now.
Yeah.
Like, the job growth has broken records.
Yeah.
No one, it's just broken records. Nothing has ever, how you're not out there talking about this constantly.
Yeah.
So that's frustrating me. But to get back to your original question,
one
thing we've done really well is abortion.
Thank you, Flower Lady, for the gift, by the way, on TikTok. Talk about abortion, and then let's go for questions.
Yes, the one thing we've done really, really well is define them and point out their insanity. The many members of the Republican Party who not only, say a woman does not control her body if she's a victim of rape or incest, but if her life is in danger. And we've called them out on all of their lies about it, and we've put them on the defensive. In South Carolina, this tells you something. Joe Cunningham, a former congressman, he got knocked out in 2020, who's running for governor there. And it's an uphill race, and I don't know that he'll pull it off, even though he's a terrific candidate and very charismatic. But he ran an ad with a woman who had been, I hate using, but we got to be honest with this. She was gang raped and got pregnant when she was 12. And she's now like in her 40s or 50s and was talking about how her life would be different if Republicans were in charge. And it's an incredible ad.
Right.
Eric Swalwell himself put out this incredible ad where a mom is arrested. Like people think of women who get abortions, and Republicans have created this sort of image. It's, young single women having sex and all this. It's a mom sitting there with her kids and the family, and the police come and knock on the door and arrest her.
Right.
Like we put the issue back on the front burner by forcing the issue, by talking about it, by making ads, by doing so. I think that is still going to be one of the, if not the lead issue, one of the 2 lead issues that'll decide this election.
Right.
Which is bad for Republicans.
All right. Let me pull up questions, guys. So TikTok we're streaming, so I can't access the Q&A anyway. But just as an aside, because the TikTok folks will appreciate this, TikTok got rid of the Q&A feature entirely on my profile so that you may see it. I can't, so I can't even access your questions. How obnoxious, whatever.
Why'd they do that?
They keep changing things. They keep switching things on certain people to see how it works and stuff. But this is a really good feature in any case. But so TikTok, feel free to pose your questions on TikTok itself. I already pulled up 4 of questions on YouTube, etc. Let me see here. Pauline,
and guys, John will tell you at some point. You can find me on YouTube. I do these.
Oh, I'm sorry. Tell people right now in the middle. Where do they find you?
So and I will try to. I can't put it in the comments from here, but I will. I've got I do daily. I call them takedowns and go after certain Republicans and
on YouTube.
And you can find me, the usual youtube.com, and then it's / and it's just my first initial C.
Yep.
And then my last name, Schecter. So if you look at Cliff Schecter up on the thing up there,
I'm going to type it
and then SCHECTER
is your YouTube. Yep. Okay. At least I typed it in for these guys.
So come on by and find me because we're growing and I'm doing a lot there and it's fun. Okay, go ahead, John.
Pauline is asking about California. Obviously, don't go through every race because there's too many, but talk about California.
I mean, California is pretty good to us. I don't think we're going to knock out Kevin McCarthy. That's a tough seat for us to win. I'd love that. But I do think we have a great shot. We lost one or two seats that were very close, a few of them that are toss-ups like Valadeo and a few of the other ones that Republicans took back that they had lost before. I think with the kind of turnout we're going to get in California and the rules that make it so people can turn out, I think we're going to pick up one or two House seats in California. There's really not a lot else to pick up, to be honest with you. I mean, we have, like the state legislative chamber. I think do we have super majorities? I mean, we've got all of the executive offices. We've got that. I mean, I may be missing something, but there's not a lot else for us to win there. So right. I think we're gonna hold things absolutely.
Are you up on Oklahoma governor's race?
Yeah, that's what I was saying before. I think we're gonna win it.
Oh, okay.
I've seen a few polls that show I can't think of her name, but our candidate, who's a former Republican, it's the same deal as what we're saying in Kansas. Former Republican turns Democrat, runs as a moderate against the crazy right. And I think we've got a very talented candidate, and I think that's going to be the shocker.
Right.
I think we're going to win that governor's race.
MHW saying, how much damage will we suffer in the House as Dems? Now, I don't know if you said that. Did you say what your prediction was for the House?
No, I haven't yet. I think that
saving the best for last.
I know. I mean, that's the one that's toughest to predict. I think it's going to be incredibly close. I hate having to say it. I think the chances are we're going to lose the House by about 2 to 5 votes.
Oh,
I am praying and hoping. The analysis from CBS News, just so everybody knows here, said that if we got the youth turnout, we got like what we got in Kansas and whatever, Democrats would hold the House by 1 seat.
Right.
So it is not impossible. And I would just say to everybody, turn out. But so much has to go right for us.
Right.
I'm not ready to write it off. I'm not ready. I would tell you that, again, percentage-wise, I think 60 to 70% likely they take it by a couple votes. I think there's a slight chance that we can turn our folks out and hold on by the skin of our teeth. And I'm hoping and I'm praying.
David is asking, if we wanted to contribute, which Democratic, this is for Americans, which Democratic candidates could benefit most from a last-minute infusion of cash?
Whoever said, is there a preference for you in like what races, or do you care?
Give him House and Senate.
Senate races.
Actually, Cliff, everything you've talked about, what would be the top 2 or 3 of?
Okay, so Senate races, Cortez Masto, I brought up to hold that seat in Nevada. Beasley in North Carolina to maybe win that seat, and Tim Ryan here in Ohio because Mitch McConnell dumped like $30 million in here because Ryan was winning, and the guy here is Peter Thiel's candidate too. Those 3, I would say, Cortez Masto, Beasley, and let me say 4. I'm sorry. Cortez Masto, Beasley, Tim Ryan, and then Mandela Barnes in Wisconsin because he's running against Ron Johnson, who's besides being a complete idiot and a Russian spy, allegedly, is also a self-funder because he did the old-fashioned thing and married into a lot of money.
Right.
So Mandela Barnes could use some funds too. Those 4 would be the 4 that I would give it to. There in the House, I brought up the seats that Democrats hold that we need, that either Democrats or Republicans hold that are toss-ups. Elaine Luria in Virginia is terrific, and we need to hold that seat.
Right.
The one I brought up here in Ohio, Greg Landsman, we need that seat. New York 19, the new seat there, it's going to be a swing seat. A guy named Josh Riley, he's been raising a lot of money, but still, it's a tough seat. He could do well. Peltola in Alaska, absolutely. Adam Frisch in Colorado. A guy who's been running a terrific race, former member of Congress who got knocked out and has just been on fire and been going on offense on the crime issue, which I've wanted Democrats to do, and going after his Republican opponent because she refuses to ban assault rifles. And all this is Max Rose in New York, who's in Staten Island and whatever. Right. I think he's got a great chance. I'd look at that as another one. Spanberger, another one, a very close race.
My name is Abigail Spanberger. I love her.
She's terrific.
Yeah. Mary Cheney was campaigning with her, I believe, or is about to.
Yeah. And what is the one? Oh, I can't think of her name. There's one in Michigan.
Oh.
Hold on. I want to get it right because she's awesome.
Right.
Oh, Slotkin. Alyssa Slotkin.
Yeah.
That is also a close race, a very good Democrat. I would look at that one too.
That's a good question. Elise Stefanik.
I mean, in the redistricting in New York, because the judges in the end wouldn't let us redistrict the way Republicans get to in their states. Stefanik, I'm not saying, I mean, if you're willing to take a risk with some money, put it in there. I'd love to see her lose, but we really need to run the table to knock her out.
How does it look for Ms. Stefanik?
She's going to hold on probably.
Oh, God.
It's just, I mean, look, if we have a night of all nights and Gen Z and people of color and women and every group that we need turns out to the hilt, yes, there's a chance, but it's a tough, that's a tough one.
Right. Lisa's asking, should Democrats have come out with more messaging about the Paul Pelosi attack, the attack on her husband, tying it to January 6th?
Yes. And that would take us having built a narrative 3 months or 6 months ago that John and I always talk about, and pisses me off. The response and I said this at the time.
Yeah.
The response to the Republican BS on crime, where they're just pulling old Willie Horton stuff out and making up lies and whatever. There's two types of crime that have gone up: assault and murder. Why? Because there's been a surge in gun violence. Gee, I wonder why that would have happened. That's why I brought up what Max Rose was doing. We should have been messaging, and people showed that was a winning issue for us after those terrible shootings this past summer. To me, January 6th and guns should have been our response to them, and how much they love criminals. When they called them political prisoners,
right.
When Louis Gohmert gave an American flag, for Christ's sake, to one of the people involved in January 6th, all these candidates like Doug Mastriano, that lunatic in Pennsylvania, that were there. We should have built the entire narrative, counter narrative on crime should have been, and of course, the easiest one in the world, Donald Trump stealing documents,
right.
And all the other things. It should, the counter narrative should have been, your president is a criminal, you're a bunch of criminals who attacked and ransacked the Capitol, and you've put guns in the hands of criminals and terrorists to create this crime wave. That should have been our multi-layered response. And then John and I always talk about, you create a narrative, and then when opportunities come up, and don't take opportunity the wrong way. I would give almost anything for Paul Pelosi to not have had that happen. Right. Politically, it's an opportunity. In a human way, it's sorry, again, I don't know if I can curse here. It is awful and heartbreaking. So I want you to understand that the Paul Pelosi thing would have fit into that January 6th narrative, that Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping plot. It just came out that somebody pled guilty to trying to put together a plot to attack Eric Swalwell and his family. This all should have, this narrative
would have come a week before the election, and everyone would have gone, oh my God, Democrats have been talking for hell, not 6 months. That you go back to the shooting in the synagogue. You go back to that crazy guy down in Florida or whatever, who sent the pipe bombs to everybody. You would have all of that.
Cesar Sayoc. Yep. The minute that they made their attack on us, because inflation started coming down and all the other stuff, so it wasn't working anymore. The minute they decided it was going to be about crime, our response should have been, bring it on. And we should have, with the January 6th committee hearing, should have been turned to ads.
Anyway,
I'm just saying. So yes, there should have been a narrative. Now we've got some people who are out there saying it, and it'll have some impact, the Paul Pelosi thing, as it should, because we've got some folks out there talking about it. Joe Biden came out and talked about it, but there should have been a broader narrative about Republicans are criminals.
And you get into the whole issue of, sorry, I got like hair in my eye. You get into the whole issue of the extremism aspect, in terms of Republican member of Congress who's going to be a subcommittee chair coming out and mocking Paul Pelosi and pushing out this conspiracy theory. You had the head of the RNC trying to turn it around and make it a political issue.
Ted Cruz tweeted out the conspiracy theory.
Yeah, so did Elon Musk. But you have that aspect.
Right, but Ted Cruz Elon Musk is, and we should have a whole other conversation about that sometime. But Ted Cruz is an office-holding Republican who came in second in the primaries to Donald Trump. You know what I mean? I mean, like this is a narrative that we would have been able to run with had we done it. So.
Another question here. Roshin. I'm working on it. Roshin, who's Irish, thus I've been having issues with her name.
You have the cool. I mean, I don't know which part, but
they have the best names. They're just
the most beautiful. Well, I'm just talking about the most beautiful place I've ever been. I would probably say is Ireland.
Right.
I mean, I did a week and a half drive around Dingle Peninsula and I pronounce it wrong, but the cliffs of Moher. I mean, just absolutely beautiful.
Right.
I loved it.
So she was asking, what's going on with the northeastern states? People don't really talk about that.
There's not a lot going on for a while. It looked like, New Hampshire was the one that was worrisome for us. They nominated a guy, a former general, Bolduc, nice French name, who's a lunatic. He's the one who said, gentlemen legislators should decide whether women have abortions or not. And, things, he wants to get rid of the 17th Amendment and go back to corrupt state legislatures appointing senators. He's a crazy person.
Right.
And so Maggie Hassan has run a solid race and has looked like she's in great shape. And that was the biggest race that we were worried about, unless you're counting Pennsylvania as the Northeast. We already talked about that Senate race. Governor-wise, it'll be interesting. The Republicans were able to win in Massachusetts because they nominated a moderate, Charlie Baker, and they're able to win in Maryland because they nominated a moderate, Larry Hogan. Instead, now even those two states have been taken over by their lunatics. So because of the people they've nominated, we're going to pick up those two governorships, I would say almost definitely. I'm trying to remember. I don't remember, and I apologize for this. I don't remember because I don't think there's term limits, if Phil Scott, the very moderate to liberal Republican in Vermont, is running for re-election, the one that came out in favor of impeaching Trump. I mean, if he is, then he could win re-election because he's not a Republican in any sense of being a Republican outside of Vermont. I don't remember. I could look it up right now. Let's see. Is Phil Scott? Come on. Looks well. They keep telling me he ran last time. Let's see, 22 gubernatorial election. Yeah, he's seeking a fourth term. That's the one place a Republican will probably win. I mean, Again, he's to the left of Joe Manchin by a pretty decent amount. You know what I mean? Like, he's a Vermont Republican. He can call himself a Republican. He's the one who, after Parkland passed universal background checks in Vermont, he led the effort, and other gun safety legislation, red flag laws and other stuff. He's pro-choice. I mean,
right.
All
right. Oregon, Biden had to go out there.
Yeah, that one's scary.
What's going on?
The independents running. Remember how Paul LePage kept getting elected in Maine because we have people splitting the vote? Yeah, we're being idiots and doing that in Oregon now too. Somebody, I don't know if it's a former Democrat, but somebody with an appeal to some Democrats is running, and it's not looking good.
Oh, great.
To be honest, it's looking like they may pick up the Oregon governorship just because we're going to split the vote.
Right.
I know. It just drives me crazy.
Now, somebody else was asking, is there any evidence of companies trying to keep prices up in order to influence the election, which obviously then leads us to talk about oil, but domestically,
that would be the big one.
But domestically, have we had any?
I mean, I haven't seen evidence of, sort of retail companies and others that have Republicans running them. I wouldn't be surprised, right? I mean, who are the people that run that? There was that company Uline that's run by crazy Republicans who gave to the I think they gave to the Stop the Steal effort.
Okay. Right.
And they hold on. They what crappy products do they make?
I mean, it doesn't matter because I've got several more questions anyway, so don't worry.
Well, yeah. So packaging. Oh, they make boxes, packaging supplies. Could I see them doing it? Yes. Right. Hobby Lobby. I mean, your places that are not just.
Wait, but let's just be clear. We have no evidence that any of those.
Oh, no, I said that. I'm just saying I could see it. I have zero evidence of anything. I think I have evidence in when it comes to oil because I've looked at their
oil
and they're still making huge profits. And yet somehow the price they've tried to keep the price up. It's come down somewhat, but and
the Saudis have done it as well.
Right. Take that for what, well, and there's just no doubt that the Saudis want chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, the Saudis, the Chinese, the Russians would all be happy if Republicans won the House and won stuff, because it's not about Republicans or Democrats. It's about chaos. Now, in Putin's case, it's not just chaos. Like, if ever someone could sort of telegraph more than Donald Trump, like, hey, if you can find the votes, blah, blah, blah. I mean, Speaker, wannabe Speaker, I can't believe I actually said that word, wannabe Speaker McCarthy, that.
Right. We don't swear. We don't swear on this. Yeah. Just
I will not swear.
TikTok.
That very unnice man who I don't like a lot.
Yeah.
He stood up and he said that, like, how can we be sending money to Ukraine when we need it here? He's made it pretty clear that they're going to cut funding from Ukraine if Republicans take the House. So Putin wants that. The other guys, I think, just want chaos and division and the rest. Putin wants chaos and division, but he also wants Republicans running the House.
Right. All right. We got Oregon. We got the prices. Hang on. Got a few more here. Sean says, this has caused me a lot of anxiety recently.
Me too, Sean.
Yeah, not you, Sean.
Some sleepless nights even.
But if the GOP takes either the House or Senate, worst case scenario, both, do you foresee the USA taking a nosedive towards something akin to 1930s Germany? Depends what he means. Oh, hold on. I guess to shorten my question, on a scale of 1 to we're doomed, how does democracy look if the GOP wins the House, Senate, or both?
On 1 to we're doomed. Even if they win both, we've still got Biden as president. We're still going to elect a number of governors and attorneys general in key states. It's closer to the doomsday clock. There's no doubt. They'll try to. Biden will have to stand up and quite frankly, show that he is willing to do a few things that I'm trying to think of the best way to put this. Step outside of the box and do things Democrats aren't often willing to do, where we're too damn cautious. An example was, remember when they had the whole debt ceiling thing, and somebody said at the time that if you read the Constitution, it can be interpreted that the president can do it on their own authority. It also can be interpreted that you could mint like $1 trillion coin or something like that. Biden's going to have to get creative and do something to take, because essentially, if McCarthy were to become speaker,
they've already said they're going to play games on the debt ceiling with him.
It would be like when Denny Hastert was speaker and Tom DeLay was the guy who was actually really running things.
Right.
Marjorie Taylor Greene and her ilk will really be running things.
And Donald Trump.
And they will do every crazy, ludicrous thing. So no, I don't. I mean, there are a few things that they can do with just having those chambers. They'll block anything good, but they're not going to have the numbers to pass anything bad. Right. So that we don't have to worry about that.
Right.
It'll only be a few things like the debt ceiling where they can try to destroy our economy.
Now, Rob Wall had an interesting thing he raised. I'm putting it actually at the bottom of the screen, but I'll read it since I'm going to put this on the bleh, whatever we call it. I do a podcast of just my audio from the shows here. On YouTube, the past 2 nights, there are people streaming live watches of the Maricopa County, Arizona voter drop boxes. They were told by the sheriff to stay 75 feet away and okay to live stream.
I mean, what do you say, right? I mean, as you brought up earlier, Elon Musk retweeted somebody who was claiming that the Paul Pelosi thing was a false flag.
Well, and they're doing this to try to scare people away from voting.
I mean, people who have had access to the best educations in the world have proven themselves to be complete morons, which, by the way, like, I need another era in this country or something to start, because I now have Elon Musk and Donald Trump's family, both of whom went to my undergrad. And I feel like I'm going to cry. I mean, at least, John Legend and Elizabeth Banks went there too.
Yeah, we like her.
Elizabeth Warren I went to Penn. Elizabeth Warren went to Penn Law School. If Evan McMullen wins, he actually was at Penn when I was there.
There you
go.
Around
the same age.
There
are some decent people, but my God, I don't know who's doing PR over at my former university, but they try to figure out a way to deal with both Musk and Trump. I'm only bringing it up that, like, people overestimate name brand universities. They overestimate educations. There are people who can be smart at one thing, or let's be honest, the people that got into places because who their parents were. But there can be other people that they're smart at one thing and complete morons at everything else. And if people like Musk and Trump and those folks can be as stupid as they are, now just think of anybody else out there. Your regular person who's going to pick up their thing and go film the Maricopa County Dropbox because I don't know what's going on there.
Right?
Are people like pulling off like one of those things from the movie Speed where they dig in from underneath? You know, Dennis Hopper, Keanu Reeves, good movie. They dig in from underneath and they rip off the drop. I mean, what do they think is happening that they're going to film? I don't know.
Well, and they also had the guys with the guns that were hanging out, setting up chairs and hanging out outside the ballot, the drop boxes as well.
That stuff is scary, and that's going to happen.
Blows my mind.
You know, I mean, I don't want violence to break out, but at the same time, we can't sit there and not vote. So, if
I agree. It's still going to scare some people.
Well, of course it is. But you know what? As much as I hate to say this, if people from our own side need to show up carrying weapons, then I suppose that's what needs to happen. And anybody who knows me would, and John could tell you, the biggest issue I worked on was gun safety for years. I don't want people carrying guns publicly ever. So this is not me endorsing that, but it's saying, sometimes there's there is no perfect good. And the one thing we cannot do is let them stop us from voting. Cannot do that.
This is a good question from Dawn. Dawn is asking, and thanks, Dawn, for this. How do polls work? Who are they polling and how? Phone calls? What?
It's gotten a lot more complicated, and polls have been much more inaccurate. Because, the thing is they're missing all sorts of folks. And this is where people say they're missing a lot of Gen Z because it's very hard to reach people on their mobile phones, right? A lot of people will not answer. I mean, do you answer if you don't know who it's coming from, John? I don't.
No.
So for people who don't have landlines, and I'm Gen X, but I don't have a landline. For Gen Z, I think that's the majority of the population. So so what did they try to do? They've tried to do online polling and coax people in. Has it turned out to be a representative sample? Some cases, yes. Some cases, no. I can't tell you that it works perfectly. So, take it with a grain of salt. What I always say to people is, it's not to say dismiss every poll. Don't be like a denier, right? Don't be Republicans who anything that goes against their beliefs and you're just like, I don't believe it. But look at many polls. Look at what else you're seeing out there. What's the news coverage like? How much money are the candidates raising, right? That tells you something about how well they're campaigning. Do you think that they're charismatic? Are they people that come across well on TV? I mean, you have to look at numerous factors and weigh them all to kind of get to where it is. Right. What's the state or district it's in? What's the lean of that state or district? All that kind of stuff. Okay. You have to analyze.
We've got several more because I asked people for the last minute questions here.
Sure.
Actually, this is a good question. We didn't really explain this. So what if somebody's live streaming a ballot box? Who cares? A drop box.
I mean, I care if it intimidates somebody who wants to go.
Why would it intimidate somebody? That's the question they're asking.
Because the history of everything from slavery to Jim Crow to our country's history is that people intimidate people of color into not voting. And if you're somebody who, if a lot of people saw that video of Ron DeSantis sending police to people's homes to try to scare them into not voting. Some people might be scared of their videotape that ends up with a Ron DeSantis, a Greg Abbott, like an unscrupulous character who will then, and I understand that.
Right.
But I also understand that, look, creepy. John and I are people who have put ourselves out here who get death threats and we keep going. Like, either you're willing to risk it for the country you love and believe in, or you're not. I would never say to anybody, insult them or say anything negative if they're not. I'm just saying, if we want to hold on to and improve this country, we've got to be willing to do these things.
Yeah. Brent is saying it would scare me. That's the thing. All you need is for it to scare 1% of the people.
Right.
Or not even 1%. In a congressional district, 100 voters, 200 voters. I mean,
here's the thing though. Here's maybe the way you get around that is make plans to go vote in groups. There's always more security in numbers. They're going to be less likely to do something. So go in a large group.
Right. The and I've got one last one from Tired Guy. That's a really good one. What state is that's not this though. What state is gerrymandering the worst in?
Because Ohio had to get a little bit better because of our Supreme Court, I would probably say at this point it's probably Texas.
Okay.
Texas is awful. There's a few. Oh no, Wisconsin too. They're also awful.
Okay.
They weren't able to fix it.
David Newsham just had a quick comment. He said, "We get guys with guns like that in Michigan at polling places on election day."
Yeah, and like I saw somebody in there. I didn't see the name, so I apologize. You said, I'm Australian, and the thought of bringing guns to a polling place is insane or whatever. And I would just say, it's somebody again who studied all this and did work on all this. The history of the Port Arthur massacre and what you guys did to pass sane gun laws is what should have happened here after Newtown.
Who's gonna tell the Australian what we do in church in America?
Oh God! I mean,
they protect
intended.
Texas, but bringing guns to church too.
But I try to remind people that after Newtown we had 55 Senate votes to pass universal, not as much as what Australia passed, but to pass universal background checks and a few other things, and they filibustered, and we didn't overturn the filibuster, which we should have back then, quite frankly.
Right.
The majority that we had. We had the votes. In a majority win system, we would have passed a number of reforms, and we wouldn't be at least in the place we're in right now.
Just a couple more. Are the police doing anything about this voter intimidation stuff that we're talking about? Can they?
There's national task forces. There's civil rights groups that are actually reaching out and working with the FBI, with Homeland Security and other groups. So I can't tell you that I know exactly what they're doing, but yes, they are addressing it legally with lawyers, Department of Justice, and other groups.
Right. And actually, I'm seeing. Hella was just asking about the Oregon governor's race. That's the one you just talked about and said the Dem was spoiling it. It looks like the Republican may win.
Yes. I mean, again, it's not a done deal, but we're splitting the vote. Oregon should be pretty much a done deal for us in every governor's race. But when you have stupid people run as independents and take votes away from Democrats, bad things happen. Again, it's like what happened in Maine, where that lunatic, Paul LePage, who was a sort of pre-Trump, kept winning. And he only kept winning because that same idiot ran as an independent twice and split the vote with the Democrat.
Two final questions, because I've got, like I said, the one last one I want to ask you from Tired Guy, but this is a good one too. I mean, a lot of good ones, but we're short for time. Way Ray Cray is asking, how much does the NRA give these people that they can't be swayed on the gun issues? That is, let me rephrase that. That is a more general question of why the hell can't we get stuff done at the federal level on guns?
So it's no longer about the NRA. That once is what it was. It's now morphed into you can't break from the groupthink that controls right-wing media, right-wing think tanks. So the NRA is a part of that. But the NRA is a paper tiger at this point.
It's gotten weaker now, right? Yeah.
They got a lot weaker. They lost a lot of money. But what you're going to have coming after you if you break with them on guns is Fox News, is talk radio, is Breitbart, is the Heritage Foundation, on and on, because you any breaking of orthodoxy on any issue, and they target you.
Right.
So it's not about the NRA anymore. It's that one party in this country, which most media will not say, has become fully radicalized. And the people that aren't radicalized, and there are some, are the exceptions. And even those guys, a lot of them, Kinzinger, Cheney, are going to be gone next time around.
Yep.
And so they've become radicalized to the point where they're scared of even the ones that don't believe it are cowardly careerists, and they're scared of taking a common sense position on guns. Now, there are 10 or 15 in the House that do. And there are a few Republican senators, but we didn't have enough. We did get some legislation passed after Uvalde, and it wasn't nothing. It was actually a couple of very good things. It still wasn't nearly enough.
Right. This is the last question. I'm going to read it, but then I want to also mention something really quick. So Tired Guy's asking, should Biden run again in a couple of years? So what it was really funny is they were showing this on Morning Joe this morning, which I like to watch. Saturday Night Live did a funny commercial this weekend. For folks who may not have seen it, but it was about a horror movie, and it was something like, sometimes the scariest people are the ones you already know. And it was all about Joe Biden and Democrats kind of not wanting him to run and feeling like, he did his thing, but he's getting old and this kind of thing. And then they sort of agreed that he shouldn't run. And then they started going through, well, what about, so-and-so? What about so-and-so? And they started going through, what about Kamala? And what about Beto? And they're like, shut up. And then finally somebody goes, I saw
the Beto flyer comes under the door and like, ah!
Well, it's the guy. Well, no, this was finally the guy that was possessed, and he turns around and he's clearly been now possessed by the devil. And he goes, "I'm with her," and they all go, "No!" And then finally, the one woman goes, maybe Biden isn't so bad. Now, this was something that I asked. I think this is what I asked David Frum. I think it was, and Frum said, "Yeah," he said. Biden, he goes, first of all, you're going to be in anybody else, you're going to have the free for all. Do you really want that free for all to happen all over again? All the crazy candidates. I mean, not crazy candidates, but all the crazy infighting, everybody hating each other again. All the Bernie.
So he thinks Biden should run.
Yeah. Sorry, what were you saying?
He thinks Biden should run for re-election.
Yeah. He says there's really no alternative, that the alternatives are terrible because of it being a free-for-all, Democrats hating each other. And then you get into the issue of who's qualified and should it be Kamala, but what if Biden doesn't really want to weigh in? And oh my God, Kamala versus Pete versus Warren. And I did the Bernie thing. I was like, what about Bernie? I mean, like that crazy bull stuff again,
So yeah, that would worry me a lot.
I will say this: Cliff did fundraising for Biden in the previous election.
I did actually. I wrote ads for him.
Yeah,
is what I did. For him.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay. But I mean, I will be fully objective. I mean, trust me. What I'm going to say is not as pro-Biden as you think. So, I mean, I think he's done an incredible job, actually, overall on domestic policy. I don't think he's told his story well enough. They have, but after this midterm. Anybody who sort of makes these sort of pronouncements pre-midterm, I think forgets how this country works. Everybody likes new shiny objects and everybody likes comeback stories and whatever. So what you need to see is how do these midterms go? Are there any new shiny objects that win? Like a classic example, if Beto does knock off Abbott in Texas, if Stacey Abrams does knock off Kemp in Georgia, if, right. Think of somebody else in the, a big race like that, right away, they're going to start being talked about.
Well, somebody else is saying, what about Gretchen Whitmer?
It's hilarious. I was about to say my top choice would actually be Gretchen Whitmer. I think she's got the experience. She's from a Midwestern state. I'm sorry. Please don't get offended, people. This is not me being sexist. This is me being objective. She's attractive, and that matters. She's charismatic.
Yep.
She's brilliant.
Yep. I like the way she carries herself.
Yep, she's the right age. I think she's 50 something.
Yeah.
I think, and she's from a Midwestern swing state.
Yeah.
I think that we see how things go. But if she wins really big, so for her, is her having a big reelection would absolutely propel her. And I think we do have to look at it, and I do think Biden has to think about it because again, let's see where his numbers are, let's see where everything is, but age is an issue. Yeah. And there will be people who are say, I can't, that's too old and I can't vote for somebody at that point. And, I think
he's going to be old.
I know. So I think it's something that I need to see how the midterms turn out. If there's a few people that rise above, and then maybe there's less of a fight because those people are so above everything else that they're kind of the only ones there. And I really do think Biden should consider for this country what everything looks like. If his numbers rebound in a huge way, and if there's no heir apparent, and whatever, that's one thing. But I think if there is, and his numbers don't, it needs to be seriously considered.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Cliff, for joining us. Why don't you tell folks one more time how they can follow you online, how they can follow you on your YouTube, etc.
Yep. So the best is YouTube, and that is just youtube.com, and it's /C. as in the letter C, like Cliff Schecter, SCHECTER. You can see it up on the screen there. Please come and follow. I do what I consider to be aggressive and hopefully funny and whatever, regular takedowns of terrible Republicans. And I'm going to expand the channel. I've got some interviews coming up with some celebrities, which I think you'll all enjoy. And then the other place, while I'm still there, at Cliff Schecter on Twitter. I mean, at this point, I don't believe in ceding ground to bullies. So if you're on Twitter, so I am going to stay there. I've opened a few others, like Counter Social, which is also at Cliff Schecter.
I'm getting active on there too.
So you can find me at Cliff Schecter on Counter Social. But I'm at Cliff Schecter on Twitter. My plan is to stay in the hope that he makes such an ass of himself and he does so badly that he has to go and run and sell it to somebody else because he's going to be bankrupt, is what my hope is. Because advertisers are going to flee and then he's going to have to make a decision.
Yep.
If he doesn't sell and it gets worse and worse and it becomes a place where even I don't feel like I can do any good anymore there, then after the new year, I'll have to reevaluate.
Well, at the very least, I mean, I don't want to go out on a total Elon Musk tangent, but the news that broke last night was that Musk is now going to not only charge people for being verified on Twitter, having the check mark, but they're making it part of the $20 a month package, which pretty much means anybody can get verified as long as they pay $20, which means all that check mark is that you were willing to pay
money. Like, you remember they send you that stuff in the mail? Like, do you want to be in the book, the who's who of whatever? And you pay them? Yeah, you would. They wanted you to. And of course, we'd all be like, are you insane?
Yeah.
Like for this paid fake achievement, it's a paid fake. It's not, it has no value.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know what you're going to do, John. I mean, I'm in disgust with a lot. I'm not paying $20 to be verified. And then what happens is if they take away my verification and people start cloning my account, and attack, and my reputation starts going down, I may have to leave Twitter. I mean, that's what may happen.
Yeah. What was interesting, Cliff, last night, and just for everybody else, I was watching on Twitter when the news broke about this $20 a month thing and that it would be open to everybody. Now, the problem there becomes that, well, Josh Marshall did a wonderful analysis of all of this. And a couple different things here. First of all, Josh was talking about, there was a cachet to being verified on Twitter. Right. And people that wanted to be, and people who, I got verified and I was very happy. And it did. It helped my followers go up. Since then, they've been stagnant for years. But it helps to make you look legitimate. And I find when I'm tweeting at important people, they will see my comment.
They pay more attention. Yes.
They see, but also, Cliff, because sometimes when you're important, I mean, not me, but I mean, people that are really big, they're getting so much stuff that they'll filter out by verified accounts.
They will.
So we know it's
There's no doubt you get when you want to reach people that are
right.
Yeah.
But
so everything John just said is true. It helps in that way. And then I would also add, quite frankly, again, like, when you do something in the public eye, what John does here, what I do on my YouTube, what we do when we go guests on TV and radio, when we write pieces, I still contribute. It's been a while, but technically still contribute to the Daily Beast, and and write for them now and again. If somebody can go on there now and just pretend to be me and go to a bunch of people pretending to be me and ask them for money and raise funds off of my name illegitimately, which they could do, or other stuff like that, it's going to make it so I may have to make a choice to leave. I mean, that's
here's the bigger problem on this, and because everyone was weighing in last night, and I kid you not. Now, mind you, nobody would admit it probably if they were, but so many of the people I follow, either I'm friends with or I follow on Twitter, everyone was saying there isn't a chance in hell. So that was the first issue. Second problem was, as Josh Marshall pointed out, and this, I will say, developed just through the conversation, because I was thinking, oh God, what am I going to do? It's gotten to the point already just through a couple hours last night where having the check mark after, because they're going to give you 90 days and you lose it. Having the check mark after 90 days means you were willing to pay Elon $20 a month.
Right. And that's going to make you look stupid anyhow. I mean,
it's now going to be a stigma, is my point.
Yep. So it goes from being it goes from being this cachet to an actual. There's no winning.
You were arrogant enough that you thought, I've got to keep it, so I'm going to pay and dumb enough to pay $20 a month. And this is like financing a Trump hotel, is what you're now doing. That it's buying a Domino's pizza in the.
Of course, I'm not giving that son of a bitch 1 cent of my money.
That's the other problem. He has turned it into very quickly I'm not giving that. I mean,
which just again shows
if he went after Paul Pelosi this weekend, the little
which just shows how well he did, based upon government subsidies and all this stuff, and what a moron he is, just like Trump when it comes to being a businessman. Yeah, because this is, I mean, I don't know if you could do anything more stupid. The people that bring the advertisers there are journalists, are celebrity, actors, singers, people that have those blue check marks.
Yeah.
And now when they lose them and they're worried that they're going to be cloned or whatever, they're going to leave.
Yeah.
So what brings his site its value is going to go, and then he's going to keep retweeting stupid things, which is going to scare away advertisers. I mean, basically, either he's going to have to sell this thing, or as I've been using it as a description, it's going to be MySpaced, is how I've said it. Within 6 months to a year, it gets MySpaced.
He's going to destroy it. He's going to the other well, actually, and selling it, people were saying, is going to be hard. Alex Stamos was weighing in, who I guess was I want to say was wasn't he the shit? Sorry, I'm not supposed to swear on because TikTok.
John, see, I didn't even swear this whole time. No,
I really can't because it screws up the algorithm on TikTok quite seriously. But Alex Stamos, I forget if he was the Facebook guy, but he jumped in and was sort of analyzing all of this. No, he's whatever. He's destroying it. I know what it was. The most recent sort of surveys of and TikTok itself found was that most of the sort of velocity of comments on the site come from a very small number of super users. And it's a dwindling number, and a dwindling in terms of how much they're posting. And by the way, could be considered super users. It was people who check in at most. It was tweeting 3 or 4 times a week and checking in every day. And we were all reading it going, oh my God.
I know. What's wrong with us? So are you saying that actually that the number of users has been going down?
The number of super users or their engagement has been going down.
Yeah, I mean, he's again, the value in that site was all these people, important people that were there.
I don't like being there, Cliff. I'm not going to leave because I've got 100,000 followers. You've got like 40,000, right? And plus.
Hey, I just hit 57 or 8.
Oh, okay. There you go. So, I mean, you don't want to lose that number. But having said that, just in 3 days, it's not fun anymore.
That's what I mean. He's already making it. I've gotten, there's that many more trolls, and I've got a thick skin. I don't care. But it's not about like them stupid trolls hurting my feelings. It's that if I have to spend all this time getting rid of them, you know what I mean? So that becomes something that I'm spending my time on instead of what I want to be doing. It just becomes a chore.
I've lost like 1,400 people in the last 3 days since Musk took over. 4 days since he took over. 1,400 people have left. Yeah,
right.
I mean,
so I'm just saying, for me, I have no plans to leave at this point. I'm going to stay, at least a couple months. And you're supposedly he's going to do the 90-day period where you're supposed to sign up anyhow. And that starts November 7th or something. So, that takes you out to February 7th. I'm going to stay lead. But if at that point it becomes a crazy free-for-all and he's become a nut and the site's already dying and a lot of people I like have left, a few people I like have already left, then I'm going to reevaluate and I may be out.
Yeah. No, we'll see. But it really is. He's he's he didn't single-handedly though. Jack wooed him. Jack Dorsey.
Yeah, and that's the other thing when people talk about going to Jack's new site, Blue Sky.
Oh,
Jack thought that this was screw Jack. Jack thought this was a great guy to take over and set it.
Yeah, he begged him to come on.
I won't go. Jack, there's nothing Jack will ever create in his life that I will join.
Yeah.
So
anyway, all right, guys, let's sign off. Cliff, thanks for joining us, guys. Hope you found it useful. And I will be back tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern for our usual Ukraine update. All right, guys.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. I appreciate your watching, and thanks, John.
Thanks. And I'm going to hang on for 8 seconds. We have to count because it takes TikTok 8 seconds to catch up. They're a little slow. I'm kidding. But TikTok has a delay. So there we go.
Should I leave the studio right now?
You may. I'm going to hang up anyway. So thanks.
Okay. All right. Well, take care, everybody. Thank you.